Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome back. Zoya, podcast producer here. This week, we've got Robin Merttens speaking to a leading female CEO, Liselotte Munk, of insurance software company Fadata. Fadata have gone through some changes over the past few years, and it was good to catch up with Liselotte on Fadata's expansion to new spaces across the globe, the difficulties in integrating products with insurers, and where the market's heading next. This isn't Liselotte's first time on the podcast, so do check out the previous issue if you enjoyed the conversation. Well, if you're already not familiar with InsTech, take a look at instech.co to find out what other podcasts and exciting upcoming events we have lined up. That's pretty much it. Now back to Robin and Liselotte.
For this week's InsTech podcast, I have a very rare beast. I have a female CEO of an insurance software company. I've got Liselotte Munk, who's the CEO of the Fadata Group. Thanks for joining me.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Now, you've been the CEO there for 6 years. Are you still enjoying the role?
Absolutely. It's basically the best place to be in, as I've said for many years, but it's still the case. It's an interesting market. It's interesting clients we're working with, and technology has never been more business-driven than they are today.
Well, I bet the role of the CEO is much more enjoyable if the company is doing well. How is Fadata doing? What will the shareholders report for 2024 look like?
Yeah, I think we are actually doing great. We're on a great growth track in also a market that are difficult, but of course maturing when it comes to acquiring technology platforms. But for 24, it has been a great year. We expect to report a good result as well. So far, we have 4 new clients joining this year. We have new releases of our software. Our cloud platform is maturing because we are now running in 6-7 countries, and also new regions like APAC, expanding area for us. So I think we're doing great opening new offices to actually capture the market and embrace the differences we have in the different regions. So Malaysia and Peru is new offices this year for us.
Well, that sounds very encouraging. My thesis about selling policy admin systems is that the companies only change them very rarely. I'm sort of take the view that they're changing them even more rarely than they used to, in the sense that really big transformation projects are out of vogue. Does that help you or hinder you? I mean, what are you seeing around that?
It's clear it's a very big decision for the insurance company when they decide to exchange the core insurance. But I would also say what we see is that there are different ways of exchanging it that actually make the risk and the investment lesser, you can say. And that's, of course, the maturity of the market that we can see kicking in. But in general, it is first internally a very lengthy and lengthy process to get a decision through. And then, of course, we go through a selection process, and then we have the negotiation. So it's quite the classic process, but it's still a different way of implementing it. And I expect personally that this will also be game-changing the market, which will actually drive shorter processes and also shorter way to value from technology investments.
Let me just hone in on that, because it's a constant grumble that we hear from tech vendors about the sort of decision-making cycles. We are lucky enough to talk to people coming into the UK when it's a new market and so on. We warn them it's 18 months to 2 years minimum. And that's not necessarily if you're a policy admin system provider. Is that what you're saying? I mean, is that typical?
Yes, that's very typical. And they can even be longer because it depends on where we start engaging. So if we start engaging when the vision is clear and the strategy has already been decided, then 18 to 24 months might be an average. But if we enter actually earlier stage, then it can be a longer time horizon.
Which do you prefer to those two models? Do you like getting involved really early so that you can sort of influence strategy and the tech to go with it? Or is it in reality best if you come straight in when they know what they want and you can work out whether you fit the bill?
I would say we enjoy being engaged because buying technology is not like buying a new headset for your iPhones. It is something that are very closely related to the business strategy. and to discuss the business strategy, to understand what the drivers are for the investment is also a part of our value proposition. Because the platform is there, of course, but how you implement it, how you want to configure it, and so on is very depending on what the business case are. So we are very happy to be involved early stage in the discussions.
Do you see these decision cycles getting longer or shorter? You take those things together, the amount of analysis people want to do, the involvement of procurement people. I'm starting to say to myself that the average procurement process is going to be 3 years in a few years' time. Do you think that's right?
You might be right, because of the internal organization of the companies, of course, are getting more complex, and you have much more compliance to comprehend with and so on. That is one element. But I also see that the way we sell and deliver software gets a little bit more nimble, which means that business managers, business directors within their own budget might take some of the decisions as well. They might also look at how can we take it in small pieces by, for instance, introducing a new product to a new market or even to a mature market. Then we need a platform. But that will be an easier process than if you discuss a core exchange process, for instance.
Is there a generational shift too, by which I mean selling tech 10 or 20 years ago involves selling tech to somebody who'd not spent a lifetime in it, whereas now you sense the latest generation of CTO, CIOs, they're 35, 40, 45, and they're much more tech savvy. Does that change things?
For sure, we see very IT skilled processes right now, and that is not coming from IT departments only. We see that business managers, procurement also, they for sure understand much better what it is they are looking for and the drivers in technology. So from that point of view, I see that also the C-suite are getting into much more knowledgeable processes around the IT spends. Where do they want to prioritize? What is important for developing their strategy and so on? And I think it's getting much more driven by knowledge about how technology can empower them as insurer and help them actually accelerate their business.
Just changing tack. So you mentioned earlier you're opening new offices. Fadata's got a sort of solid base here in Europe, which is the foundations of your business. But you also have a decent footprint in Asia Pac, Latin America. Have you seen any regional variations in the overarching themes?
Yeah, I think APAC has for years now been very impacted by real growth market in the insurance space. And of course, that accelerates the process of introducing new brands, new logos, new products to the market. And it might also be impacted a little bit with lesser regulation, of course. So you can do more in some areas, test it and so on. And that's something we see. So I would say the speed to market is definitely impacted by a real growth where many insurance companies want to take a part of that market share. So that, of course, accelerates the processes as opposed to Europe, where it's more mature markets, it's more stable market, and there are other drivers. It's more cost-cutting drivers, compliance drivers, and so on. And that's very different than new market shares drivers.
Yeah. The other observation I'd make about your market is, particularly policy admin systems, is that it's dominated, particularly here in the US and Europe, by Guidewire and Duck Creek, who seem to get their fair share of the tier one insurers. But at least apocryphally, there's a lot of comment made around the cost of implementation, cost of licensing. How do you deal with Duck Creek and Guidewire as the sort of preeminent players? Do you try and avoid them? What's your tactics as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, and in general, we try to concentrate on our own vision and our own strategy. And also because the market is quite big, I would say in general, our reflection is that we needed to be less investment heavy upfront. And we also needed to come with a less riskier implementation process. And that has been, a driver for our SaaS transition, but also the transition of the whole company to actually help clients to be onboarded to the platform. So I think this has been the drivers for the past 3 to 4 years for us. And we think that works quite well. So today we see that we have from signature to go live, 3 to 6 months. And then when the platform is in place, they can launch new products within 2 to 3 weeks. And I think the speed to market is a part of our value proposition to the market, also for new clients coming in and pipeline or prospects that wants to talk to us. But I think also even in Europe, this is interesting because risk and cost cutting and so on is a big topic. And for that reason, with this model, we can represent something that are a very good alternative to Guidewire and Duck Creek.
Do you ever get the chance to sell to new insurers? I'm thinking about where your best opportunities lie. We talked about how difficult it is to sell to incumbent insurers, the timelines and so on. The best possible client must be a new insurer, maybe in Europe or US, coming to market, greenfield site. Do you ever see any of those these days?
No, it's not a lot actually. And I think the capital structure of a real insurance company actually prevents new entrants. And Europe is even more protected by EU regulation. So it's extremely difficult to go into the different markets in Europe. It's also one of our sweet spots. You were asking to the tier one for Duck Creek and Guidewire. I think it is also one of our sweet spots, and that is global companies that want to expand to new markets, or they just want to move faster or with lower cost or whatever in some of the markets they already operate in. For that reason, we also compete in the tier one segments because many of those are actually tier ones because they are operating either globally or regionally. But new companies coming in, we very, very seldom see that.
So I can see that. You're talking about in Asia Pac or Latin America, subsidiaries of tier one companies whose gross written premiums and total headcount simply don't justify the potentially high costs of a Guidewire or a Duck Creek, and they need some alternative system that enables them to operate at a lower cost base. Is that the target?
The low cost, you can say, but also the flexibility, because when those tier ones are entering new markets, they might not have a full overview of the development of that market. So the fast reaction to new market trends is something that are important for them, of course. The platform, first and foremost, is end to end. So they don't have to, think about a new claim solution or anything when they become bigger in the portfolio. They can handle the client end to end in Fadata system INSYS. And even many of these bigger companies, they are building up center of excellence, which means that they can, operate the system on a daily basis with their own people. And that goes cross lines of business. And I think that flexibility with a cost part, but the flexibility is very attractive in those markets that are highly volatile.
Changing subject completely, we can't do a podcast these days without some mention of AI, and I'm sure that there are ways in which you use it or you're being asked to use it. What's the Fadata view on the use of AI?
Yeah, I think this is, of course, a double-sided approach we have to AI because we are seeing how we can utilize AI internally in the company to produce software, to produce high-quality software. That is one element, but also, of course, to run the company with AI-driven processes in HR and finance and so on. This is something we, of course, explore and already have some solutions in place. For instance, quality assurance of our software releases. We are using AI there, but also for producing code faster with higher efficiency. This is one of the approaches we have. Clients are also looking into underwriting sophistication methodologies, maybe even market approach with more sophisticated data segmentation of markets and so on. And there we work with partners that has expertise in that area. Some actually are so big that they have their own AI in the risk management area, and they have actually developed their own smaller solutions that we have to integrate to. Others want to integrate to external solutions. And I would say, per nature, insurance is data driven. So we follow the market here, we follow those experts, both internal and external, but we are not building up our own center of AI experts.
That makes sense. I get that. Now, if I was to pick on another theme where the market spends a disproportionate amount of time now, the expression we're starting to use is risk ops. What I mean by risk ops is the data to decision part of it, the pre-admin piece, the ingestion of data, the workflow, the triage, data augmentation, modeling, that sort of thing. Policy admin system is a policy admin system, but it's inevitable that you'll get dragged into providing some of those features. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, we see that to integrate to API REST layers is becoming a clear demand for insurance companies. And that is, of course, to have integration into the operations of insurance with those modeling. And they can be based on all kind of tooling. And I think our strategy here has been to be as open as possible to do the integration during the implementations of INSYS. But definitely, we see that you can say sophistication of how to price a risk and so on. It's becoming much more complicated and much more data driven. But it's again about integration into our administration platform rather than we are developing and delivering those solutions.
Yeah, I mean, there's two strategies for you, isn't there? There's the sort of come to me, I have an ecosystem, pick from my supermarket of data providers and augmenters. Or you say, I'm a policy admin system provider who's agnostic. You simply have to tell me who you want to deal with, and I have a easy API integration capability, and we'll plug them in, and you're effectively voting for the second, which seems entirely understandable to me.
Yeah, I mean, we can do both, but in many cases that they already have invested in modeling a lot. To ask them to start from scratch again with a new tool, in my view, it doesn't make sense. So for us, it's about easy connectivity into those modeling that they already have invested in.
Well, I can see why you're enjoying yourself as the CEO of the Fadata, and I'm expecting you to have many more years. This is a question we always ask all of our guests, and I'm keen to hear what your observations would be. If the listeners of this podcast take away one thing, what's the one thing that you would like them to remember?
First and foremost, I hope that I come across with that Fadata has a very strong offering for the global insurance industry. We might not be the right solution in all cases, but we are definitely a strong solution that should be considered in all evaluation of technology platforms. Then I would also say that the way we develop the software is really in a community way. We really are driven by people that understand insurance, and we are very keen on having people actually with in-depth understanding of the insurance drivers locally. Because yes, in very big picture, insurance is the same globally. But when you go into the details, of course, there are variances. And for us, it's important that we understand that and that we can drive it for our clients. I know that was too, Robin, but I hope you can bear with me.
We'll indulge you in two. It's been a great pleasure chatting. Well done with Fadata. I think I can say this, knowing the company very well, that you had your investment challenges a few years ago. You've overcome them. You're clearly thriving again, and congratulations to you and all your colleagues for being in such a good place now. And look, come back and give us a progress report, perhaps in a couple of years.
Absolutely. We will be delighted to do that.
See you soon. Thanks, Liselotte.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, if you've made it this far, then I'm sure you found this as fascinating as I did. But please do tell us what you think about this and any other podcast you're listening to. You can track Matthew Grant down on LinkedIn or Robin Merttens, or you can email any of us hello@instech.co. That's it, we are done. See you next Sunday.